Welcome to the Reddit Chronicles. Today we will be reading from TrueOffMyChest. Our first post is an update by Capable Elephant. 2 tampons may mean my marriage is over. Update. Part 1 linked in description below. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the backseat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either effing my husband, effing with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior. There was none. Our house for any misplaced foreign items. There were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said, it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2-year-old, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old pajama set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front, long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, in my opinion. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them. So I was bewildered and kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a 3rd time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. In the comments below, S'mores writes, I agree that a lot of it just doesn't add up. A random tampon, 2-year-old in clothes and hair clip the mother doesn't remember. Honestly, to me this just screams kid life. Sure, it could be that there's another woman involved who is playing mommy and who's also leaving messages to OP out of guilt, or it's just that having kids is chaotic. A house with 2 girls and 1 grown woman is simply going to be chock full of accessories and clothes that are half forgotten. One piece of clothing and a hair clip. I'm honestly much more inclined to call just toddler chaos. The tampon though, that one I don't have any idea about and was really weirded out by. Our next post is by Fluid Art. My fiancé asked me to choose between her and my mom, and I chose my mom. My mom turned 60 this year, and she is not going to live 5 years longer. 12 years ago she had a stroke that left her half side paralyzed. She still lives alone and takes care of herself completely by herself. She is very resilient, and I am incredibly proud for her, but I know that her chances of living for another 5 years are very low. My fiancé got, surprisingly, a promotion in the dream job she always wanted. Saying it's a gigantic opportunity would be saying that a Ferrari is just a car. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance. It will change her life forever. It will fulfill everything she wanted. It will make her rich. It also involves her moving countries, thousands of kilometers away. There is no way she won't accept it, and I wouldn't want her to. The moment she told me about it, I knew it was over. She asked me to come with her. I didn't even need to think about it and said no. It broke me apart, and it broke her apart, and I feel nothing and simultaneously just pain. My mother has 5 years left at best. Then she will die and just never be in my life again. For the rest of my existence until oblivion also swallows me up, I will never get to meet her again, hear her living voice again. She will be gone forever, just gone. The clock is ticking for her, every day a bit louder, and I simply cannot move away from her and see her only once a year anymore. How could I accept that only seeing her 5 times before she stopped existing? I can't, period. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but it wasn't a hard choice at all. Horror makes us happy, writes in the comments below. One of the most important lessons I learned from counseling is that when life presents you with options A and B, that there's nothing wrong with looking for options C, D, E, or F. If OP's fiancé just landed a job that fantastic, then there's no reason to believe that they can't maintain the relationship and help with OP's mother's care. If their relationship is that important to them both, then this shouldn't even be a conversation. It should just be understood. You're part of my life, and so is your mother, and whatever we need to do to make sure everything's taken care of should be taken care of. If that's not happening, then that is the problem, not OP's mom's situation. Our next post is by Decent Ant. I think I saved a girl last night. So I, M33, went out with some coworkers last night. I had quite a bit to drink and was walking home at about 2 a.m. My house is in a quiet part of town despite being a college town, so my walk is usually simple and quiet. However, as I was walking past the courthouse parking lot, I saw a car with 3 people standing outside of it. It was 2 guys with a much smaller girl in between them. Her arms were crossed and she looked distressed. I kept walking and was going to just phone the police and watch from a distance. However, as I kept walking, I saw a 3rd guy standing under a tree and he kept looking around, like he was keeping watch or something. Some frat guys on a corner house called out to me asking what was up, so I went over and described what was going on. One of the bros was even talking about bringing his gun with him in case something was up. So these 3 frat guys walk up to the situation. One of them starts walking the girl back after about a minute, while the other 2 are talking with the creeps. I thanked the guy walking back, and I left to head home. The whole situation just had me on edge, and I had to get out. I got home and talked to my wife about the whole thing. Drunk emotions were running high. I was absolutely terrified of shots being fired. In the end, I'm just glad the girl got out of there. I plan on bringing a gift of sorts to the guys that helped. The whole thing just feels so surreal. Our next post is by Defiant Definition. My wife said I'm not our daughter's father. During a huge fight, my wife told me I'm not our daughter's father. My wife and I have a 6-year-old daughter. We've been married for almost 9 years. We got into a really big argument, which isn't unusual for us these days. We've been on the verge of divorce multiple times, but always end up changing our minds. This time she got so mad that she yelled at the top of her lungs, "She's not even your daughter," and he was a better F too. She, being our daughter, of course. My wife's facial expression told me she immediately realized what she said. Then she claimed she was just mad and said it just to be mean. It's not true, blah blah blah. It made me start to think about when our daughter was conceived. We had been having marital problems even back then. We had actually kind of informally separated for a short time, and I was pretty sure I was done with the whole thing, but we both changed our minds. I can't help but wonder if she was with somebody else during that time. She could have just said what she said to be cruel, but that's a pretty serious thing to say. I hate myself that I'm looking at my daughter and wondering if features I thought she got from me really aren't from me at all. She looks so much like my wife that it's hard to see much of anyone else in her at all anyway. I love my daughter. I love being a dad, her dad. I feel like I was meant to do it. We have such a great relationship. She loves her mom, but my daughter and I just have a special bond that my wife has said she's jealous of. That might be why she said what she did, I don't know. It wouldn't change how I felt about my daughter, but my wife would definitely no longer be my wife. It scares the crap out of me to think that somebody else could have some sort of parental right to my kid, even though I'm still legally her father regardless of DNA. It's not like a random guy is going to want to come along all these years later and try to establish paternity anyway, but it's still unsettling. I'm probably overthinking it, and my wife was most likely just trying to be extra cruel, which is her defense mechanism in arguments, but I just wish I could stop thinking about it. Thank you for listening to the Reddit Chronicles. Follow for more content.